one of the reasons that I was inspired about setting it there was I was reading about the lava flows, and like there's this point where when they're cooling down, they're not quite, you won't fall through them, and they're warm enough you can stand on. They're cool enough you can stand on them, but if you stand on them too long, your shoes start to melt. So I had this whole idea of this chase sequence on a lava field, but I've got to do that. I've got to do something cool like that with Trigger Man, send him there and put him through the rigors of Iceland.
Aiden, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today, for taking the time out of your schedule.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
We are today going to be talking about book 6 in your Trigger Man series, which is called Blunt Force. And let's get started with the pitch.
Okay, so Blunt Force, the main character is Mark P.J, codename Trigger Man. He's a CIA paramilitary operator. He's in Europe. There's been a Panama Papers style release of massive amounts of data, and it reveals the location of CIA safe houses across Europe. So the CIA want to shut it down. But also the Russians and the Syrians also want to control the data for their own reasons and are killing anyone who comes into contact with it. But at the heart of the story, it's about two siblings who are using the data to right a wrong. And when the Trigger Man finds out about this, he gets a second purpose or second wind behind him to like a more personal mission that he needs to resolve on top of everything else that's going on. So that's it in a summary.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. And where did the idea come from?
This is the sixth book in the Trigger Man, and I've been wanting to set a story in Europe, and I think I'm always on the lookout for ideas. I've just been reading about the Panama Papers, which is basically, it was a firm, a legal firm that had released a whole lot of their confidential client data had been exposed by some journalists, and it showed a whole lot of corruption and trading around the world. But it was like millions and millions of files, and I thought this would be a really interesting idea, in that the sense that, you know, back in the Cold War, you might steal one or two secrets, whereas this one was about, you know, thousands and thousands of secrets. So what the Russians wanted for and what the Syrians wanted for and what the Americans wanted for were all different. Mm-hmm. But they're all fighting over the same data, and it was just this kind of like, once the genie's out of the bottle, so to speak, you really can't put it back. And that was where it kind of came from. And then I'd always wanted to set a story in Iceland, where a lot of the action happens. So, yeah, so it was kind of like, a whole lot of ideas came together. I hadn't brought the Trigger Man to Europe, so it was, well, not in a big way, so that was the other reason. So, yeah,
did you use Iceland as an excuse to go there and actually check it out for your book?
Oh, you know, I would love to go there, but that's about as far away from Australia where I am as you possibly get, and it's quite expensive. I have travelled quite extensively. I think I'm close up to 30 countries I've been to now. Some of the places, you know, send your characters. It's, you know, they're not easy to get into. Like I've set one story in Central African Republic, and I don't think anyone really wants to go there. But it's, but yes, I have spent time in Europe, but I haven't got to Iceland. But it's just this incredible scenery, and one of the reasons that I was inspired about setting it there was I was reading about the lava flows, and like there's this point where when they're cooling down, they're not quite, you won't fall through them, and they're warm enough you can stand on. They're cool enough you can stand on them, but if you stand on them too long, your shoes start to melt. So I had this whole idea of this chase sequence on a lava field, but I've got to do that. I've got to do something cool like that with Trigger Man, send him there and put him through the rigors of Iceland.
Yeah, I love that moment. That was one of the questions I had for you, if the lava fields are real. So that's great. Now I know they're actually real, and that scene is possible, because it was very interesting reading it.
I actually got it out of Brian Cox's documentary, the astrophysicist. He was watching something about the Earth and how planets form, and I just went. He was in Iceland. He was actually talking about the Icelandic fields. And I thought, yeah, I've got to use this. Yeah. And then the interesting thing about Iceland is it's like all these lava fields, but you've also got these glaciers and snowfields, and you know, it's using the combination of two, and just this. you're putting Triggerman and his team in this kind of really hostile environment, but it's also in Europe, so it's this interesting juxtaposition there. I had a lot of fun writing that. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun reading it because he went through so much. Everything was against him. He was being hunted from everywhere. The weather was against him. The earth seemed to be falling apart.
Yeah, I think with action, it's if you make it too easy for the characters, readers get bored. But if he's not working his way through it, then they're kind of going like, well, he's not that clever. So you've got to find this balance of like putting him in danger, but also making him a competent agent.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I think that's probably my favourite action sequence that I've written so far across the 6 books. Yeah, I had a lot of fun writing that.
Do you find by book 6 you have to make things harder and harder on the character in order for it to be in order for your readers to want to continue engaging? Like, do you feel like you have to okay, in book 1 we could do a smaller story? I mean, I haven't read book 1, so I don't know if it is a smaller story, but you know what I mean? Like if you're raising the stakes every book.
When you talk about stakes, I probably put it in 3 categories. You've got the plot, like, what's at stake on a geopolitical level. And this one is about, exposing CIA operations because of the exposed CIA safe houses. But then it's also, you got the characters, you're trying to put them through some kind of arc in what they learn and discover about themselves. But then the other one is the action. And yeah, I feel like it's interesting when I talk to my publishers and throw them ideas about what they always come back to is they say, as long as there's lots of action, because that's what people want. So it's always, every book I'm kind of going, I feel like I need at least 3 good action sequences. So I started off with the fight sequence in Ronda in Spain, where it's that bridge over a cliff. And then I've got the Icelandic chase, and then I had the tank chase in Syria at the end, and so there's a bit of that. There's a bit of so it's not only the plot and the characters, but it's also like the timing, the action is also something I think a lot about when I'm writing.
Yeah. And what was the research like for this book? Because I was learning all kinds of stuff. You had the Cold War, the Syria, the Ukraine war, the pipeline. I mean, it went on and on. So how much research did you have to do, and what kind of things were real and factual? It all read very factual, but I don't follow closely enough to check it. But it read very factual.
Thanks. To go through the different points. Okay, so when I started out as an engineer, I now work in corporate communications, but one of my first jobs was actually on a pipeline in the outback of Australia. So that's where some of that experience came from. So yes, everything with the pigs and the oil, I still work in the oil and gas sector, but I also work in the defence sector. So, I've got all these insights through my work about how a lot of these infrastructure projects work. I guess I'm constantly reading, watching geopolitical shows. I've travelled, like I said, travelled quite extensively, so I've backpacked through Africa and South America, and Africa was one of my first trips, and that kind of gave me a big sense of the difference between what was then called the developed world, the developing world, and the difference in, quality of life and political stability and things like that. So I think it's research is always on. So a lot of what I'm writing is there, but then as I'm writing it, it's more the details I need to stop and go, well, what kind of gun would they have in this part of the world? Or I'm looking on Google Maps to try and get a sense of the terrain that they're in. The really interesting thing that happened with this one was while I was writing it, the Assad regime got kicked out of Syria. So I had to rewrite the whole ending. Because I had these Syrian agents from the Assad regime, and I thought, how can I write it in a way that still makes it relevant, even though that regime is gone now? So I've came up with a solution. Hopefully it works. But sorry, lost my
no problem.
It's. I guess to summarise, I feel like if you're always on research and reading, and the ideas will come. It's just, I find it's just the detail, like the minute detail that you need to go and stop and just check something. But that's a very quick search on the internet.
Yeah. Well, it's helpful when, when they say write what you know, it's helpful that a lot of that stuff is in your background and in your interests. Because even if you don't know things, if you're very interested in it, you can become quite convincing in how much you know when you're just enjoying that learning process, as opposed to approaching a book and then having to learn it all because you don't know anything about it and it just serves the plot. You're not really interested in it.
Another trick I use is, I used to read a lot of National Geographic articles, and they'd often give you little insights into like what it was like day to day. So you could put this flavour about what people would actually talk about, what scenes you'd see on the streets. So sometimes just a bit of description about where the trigger man is and what he's seeing and feeling and sensing. I think that also helps to bring a location alive. So I do try to do that as well.
And how do you decide how much research to include to not bog down the story? Because you were talking about 3 major action scenes, but there's also, you have information built into all those action scenes because we're constantly learning. Like, how do you know, or how do you balance, here's the background information so you're aware of what's going on where he is, and I'm not doing too much to bore a reader?
Yeah, like when I go back and read some of the classics, like Ludlow and Clancy and stuff, you can see there's a lot of exposition about what's going on.
Yeah,
but you can see with modern authors they start to change that, and I think with exposition to get the story across, it's kind of saying enough to make sure the readers know what's going on. But there's tricks you can use, like, if you want exposition, you can have 2 people talking, or you can have 2 people talking on a fast-speeding train through Japan, and one of them's got a gun pointed at the other, and then something becomes more interesting. So it's about where and how the information is relayed. Another trick I use is trying not to introduce too many characters in one scene. So it's like trying to build them up slowly. So you might meet 2 characters, and then a third one comes in 3 chapters later, and then a 4th. And so by the time you've got a big team of 5 or 6 or 8 people, how many are in that book, you're not basically forcing the reader to kind of go, well, here's 5 people, remember them all now. It's build them up slowly. So there's little tricks that I've learned along the way about how to do that, and it's that Raymond Chandler thing, like if the scene feels bored, bring someone with a gun and shoot someone. It's almost like a rhythm. Like you go, it's ticking along, but now let's add something else in, and let's just keep trying to escalate the tension as you go.
Yeah, I appreciated with the book that it started with Pierce, and it did build the team slowly, because I know in a lot of action thrillers I have a tough time, just like you said, when we get here, meet the team, I guess essentially it's almost like a flashcard of every team member, and by the time I read it all, I can't remember anybody because there are just so many names and so many details. So it was well done. That it was very nice to have that, little character here, and then here's how they impacted the story, or here's how they impacted Pierce's life throughout, I imagine, throughout the other books, and I'm kind of being brought up to speed.
This one is the one where the teams actually come together in a real way across the 6 books. So in the first one, Pierce is kind of almost operating independently.
Okay.
And then I slowly introduced the team over the last 5 books, and this is where it all kind of comes together. But I've kind of also written myself into a corner where now I've got a team of 6, and each book I've got to try and work out how to bring them all in again each time. Because you can't assume that anyone who's read the next book knows what's happened in the previous book. So yeah, it's maybe the team's too big. I'm not sure, but anyway, we'll see how we go. But I'm enjoying writing all of them. Yeah.
And how do you do your writing process in itself? Do you do a heavy outline, especially now for this book with book 6? Because I've written a trilogy, and by the time I get to book 3, I'm struggling to remember what I've said over 300,000 words. You've done that for 6 books. So are you building an outline for this book by the time you got to book 6 in order to carry it forward without, just to keep track of it all?
I do. And with Incubator, my publisher, they have these writers' workshops. So the people who run it, some of them are out of the TV industry, so they used to have writers' workshops. So they basically put you through a grilling session of like, they work you through your plot, and go, how does this happen, and why does this character know this, and does this make sense, or wouldn't it be more logical to do this? And it's really good. And so I used to be just a write it as I go because it's all in my head, but now I'm doing plots for my publishers, and that's actually refining it really well and giving me good outline. So now that when I sit down, I just go, right, right, next one, right, and it's all there. But that said, over 6 books, I have these... Peace has this secret background that I haven't revealed yet, but I've hinted at it. And even though each book is in standalone, if you read them in order, I'm building up this background of where he's come from and what his secret past is. And I'm also building up this villainous group in the background that's going to come out more and more in the book. So I do have an overall kind of arc where it's going, even though each book will be individual. So yeah, there's a lot of checking and cross-checking, and I've got this timeline of like how long ago each book was in character time, even though real world time is, the character time is a lot slower than real world time is. You know how action heroes never age? Yes, there's a lot of juggling, but I write in my day job, I write proposals for engineering projects, and I just have to be on all the time. So I've learned how to write quickly and to pick up information and write it fast. So.
Cool.
And then in that industry, I'm trying to pick up a lot of information very quickly and then turn it into content that a client can understand. So, yeah, I suppose that has helped. So, yeah, I suppose I just do it naturally now without even thinking about it. But yeah, it took a long time to get there.
That's interesting that you say helped rather than hindered, because I would think having that much of a workload on your mind would almost make you come home and be tired. When you wrote the book, were you, was it like every day writing a bit? It sounds like you have a lot on your mind, so it would be tiring.
I try and come home and write for a couple of hours every night, but sometimes work gets in the way or something's on. I try and write on the weekend as well. But yeah, I can literally just, I guess another trick that I've learned is that, when I'm doing something like going for a walk, riding my bicycle, cleaning, whatever it is, I'm just thinking through ideas. So I'm often thinking about the next scene and what's going to happen. So that when I actually do have those half an hour, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, sit down and write, I can go straight into it. I don't have to kind of think about it. So I've done the thinking beforehand.
Okay.
So again, there's lots of little tricks that I've learned over time about being more efficient in the way that I write. But I'm drawn to it. I love writing The Trigger Man. I've really got into it, and hopefully this will be... My publishers just want me to keep writing it, so hopefully I can keep it going for like 15, 20 books, maybe more. Yeah.
Do you have a plan for that series? Like when you're talking about revealing certain things, is there a number where you hope to reveal all that? Like you have kind of in mind, if you don't mind sharing it.
Yeah, sure. So I'm working on book 7 now, which is set in the Mexican drug war, and then book 8 potentially going to reveal Peace's deep background. And then from there I've got probably 2 or 3 more books planned out in reasonable detail, and then I've got this kind of long-term plan about where it can go and some of the background elements that come out. So it's kind of like the further into the future you go, the more vague it becomes, but I feel like I've got enough to keep it going for quite a while.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I look forward to continuing to read them.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed Blunt Force, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy writing them. I have a lot of fun, and I've been really happy about how well it's sold and the reviews I've got. So they've all been, for the most part, really, really positive. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, deserved for sure.
Thank you.
So looking at characters for this book, there were a lot of viewpoints. How did you keep track of all that? And when you're on book 6, maybe these I should ask these individually, but how do you keep track of arcs for the characters? Because in some books, there's character goes through this journey from beginning to end, and they come back changed, so to speak. But then we also have books that are like Jack Reacher, as an example, where he doesn't change very much because it's a series, and we love what we get from Jack Reacher. We don't need him to go through these big changes in his personality, or how do you balance all of that? Because it was great, but and I got it all, but I was just thinking while I was reading it, like writing all these characters, it's like, wow, here we are with this person and this person, and and they're all unique and they all go through so much. It's like that's a lot.
Yeah, how do I answer that? I suppose, so Pierce has this background, which when I came up with the idea, I thought, this is really great. I don't know if anyone's actually done this before. I won't say what it is because it hasn't come out yet. But I thought, but then when I started thinking about the implications of what that background would be, was it kind of started to flesh out why he reacts the way he does, and this kind of conflict that he's got. And a lot of thrillers in this genre that I've read, they tell you straight away he's done 2 tours in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq, and he's the top guy and he's marksman, and and it's all laid out for you. I went, no, I want to do the complete different approach, a bit like what Tom Wood did with East Victor the Assassin. You don't know anything about him, and I find that really intriguing. So who is he? Where's he come from?
Okay.
So there's a lot. So as I write him, he becomes more real, and it's kind of easier to write him, if that makes sense. And then I just put him in a different situation that kind of brings him up, that confronts him with his thoughts and beliefs. So in this one, you mentioned, I had a whole lot of Cold War references. I mean, his parents were spies in the Cold War, which was revealed in this one.
Yeah.
And so then that's bringing up his emotions about how he feels about that.
Yeah.
And then I've got the 2 other main characters in there are Rachel Zane, who's another paramilitary operator like Pierce, and I've got a deep background on her, which has come out in some of the earlier books, and then Mackenzie Summerfield, which is the team's analyst, and she and Pierce have a long history together, and they've been through quite a bit together.
Yeah.
And you just kind of go, what can I do with each of them? And the other thing that, like Jack Reacher doesn't change, but one thing my publisher says is, I think it's more than 50% of my readers are women. And I think that's because I do have those character arcs and the depth and the change in the characters. I think that has helped me get into that market, or that demographic of the market. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what about tracking all the characters? Do you have like a notebook of all the different people and their personalities before you start writing, or do they just come to life because you're imagining them as you're doing things like you mentioned?
A lot of people said to me, like, you can retain a lot of information in your head, and maybe I can, but yeah, because I do have notes, but there's a lot of it it's there. And I can remember back, or if I can't remember, I can remember which chapter it was in the previous book and go back and go, oh, right, there it was.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's not, I don't find it that difficult, to be honest. Maybe it's just something, skill that I'm lucky.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't have the skill, yeah.
But editing is really hard for me. So, it takes me, so everyone's got something, and everyone's that helps them, something holds them back. So
yeah. And what was it like writing the villains? Do you find getting into the villain's head difficult to give their perspective, make them seem human, not a caricature of this genre?
So I've worked in a lot of big companies where I would call it like there's a high density of sociopaths, and you see some of the people who are running companies or projects or things like that. And you go like, why are they making those decisions? And when you start to realise that they just don't care about other people, it kind of makes sense. And luckily I'm not in that world anymore, but I started to realise that there's just they're very, very small part of the world, but they're the kind of the narcissists and the sociopaths and the psychopaths that they just don't care about anyone, and they're all about themselves. And I just like this idea of blowing them over the top. So, for example, in book 5, Shock Front, that's about a former soldier who turns paramilitary, and he's basically he's almost like a cult leader. Everything he says, he believes. And he's got this island of Komodo dragons, which he feeds he feeds people to that disappoint him. And they're sort of over the top. But you make them really, really bad, and then people go like, they've got to die, they've got to get the justice. And so I try and draw real world traits from people. Like sometimes you can just watch politicians or business leaders online and some things they say. I could use that. That's like a super villain would say. But then you give them something like James Bond-esque, like a island full of Komodo dragons, just to make them that bit crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're fun. But it's trying to find something that makes each one different. I think there was, because in my third book I had an assassin who was also a comic book artist and kept drawing comic illustrations of everything that he'd done to kill people. And then suddenly he was like this. It just became more real to me, even though he's just this crazy killer.
Yeah. I love that. Drawing his killings. Well, unfortunately, we are running low on time, so I have a couple more questions for you, and it's mostly for those who are authors that are listening to the show. And I'd like to know what advice you would give someone who just published like book 1 or book 2. So they're beyond I need to find time to write, and they've written a book, they're getting into it, and now what? Because this is a stage that's also quite difficult and overwhelming, depending on if you're traditionally published or, well, either way, it's a lot.
I was originally thinking of self-publishing Triggerman, but that takes a lot of time and effort to kind of understand how to digitally market your books, right? And I tried self-publishing other books before to varying success, but then I was the group of authors that I'm with, and one of them was reading it, and he said to me, just send it out to some publishers. So there's a lot of digital publishers out there now who are looking for thriller authors, particularly action thriller authors. And the main thing I would suggest is, if you're going to a publisher, check to see how many reviews their books have on Amazon. So if they have 5 or 6, they don't know how to market it. But if they've got thousands on their books, then they know how to market it. And don't write your book to then get it stuck with a publisher that doesn't know how to promote you and get it out there. I guess that's the biggest advice I would give. Do your research on that. But having a publisher like Incubator, which are fantastic, it allows me just to concentrate on writing the books while they do all the marketing. And it's a reasonable arrangement with how they split the profits. So I would, that's right. 2 or 3 books I would go try and find a hybrid publisher. Not a hybrid publisher, a digital publisher.
Okay, thank you. Was Triggerman? Did you submit it for the first time and it was accepted?
I think it was the 3rd place I submitted it to. But yeah, Incubator picked it up, and they've been mostly doing vigilante justice, like the Jack Reacher style approach to, one guy walks into a town and kills all the bad guys.
Yeah.
But mine's more along the lines of like a Mark Green Grey Man, He's with the CIA, he's travelling around the world. I think I've sent him to about 8 books. I think I've sent him to 45 countries already. And so there was a bit of risk for them there, but it's been one of their best sellers. So, look, it's been life-changing for me. it's doing really well. I made a really good choice, and I was lucky to get with Incubator, and I've got a great editor, Alice Latchford, with Incubator. So she's been really good at honing the stories and improving them too. So yeah, get a good editor is the other thing I suggest.
Yeah, yeah. Well, congratulations on that success. 3 times is a low number. That's really good.
But to give you context, I've been writing for 30 years, and 30 years I was barely making any money on my writing, and it was just a hobby, and I was trying multiple genres, and it was only when I got into the Trigger Man that things turned around. So, I've spent a lot of time getting there. I think it was, when I started writing the Trigger Man, I went, you've actually got to start running for the market. What does the market actually want? What are the tropes? What are the expectations people have in a thriller author? What do they want from their main character? And once you start to write in a market approach, it's easier to sell for publishers to go, yeah, we're going to go with this because that will work in the market. So, yeah, Trigger Man went, but everything else before that didn't. So,
Okay.
It's not always a smooth road. Yeah.
Okay, fair. Well, that's great though. Congratulations. So, last question: where can people find your books and learn more about you?
Well, there's Blunt Force there, so that's book 6. You can get it on Amazon. It's exclusive to Amazon, so it's on the Unlimited, and you can get it in the first 3 books. You can get in audio, but you can also get it in print as well. So basically Amazon. Or you can go to my website, which is aidenbailey.com. That gives you more information where you find books.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. If you don't mind sticking around for a few extra minutes after the show, I do a few extra questions, bonus questions for the newsletter subscribers that only they get access to.
Definitely. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks again.